guys, it's been a long time coming, but I'm proud to announce that my hands are finally registered with the International Registry of Lethal Hands. This is the only place where your God-given gifts of danger can get the recognition that they truly deserve. Now you might be thinking, why on earth would anybody need to register their hands as lethal? Let me break it down for you. There are those among us whose hands are so downright dangerous, they need to be documented. Registration is a moral responsibility, and it's a vote for the greater good of humanity. The sole mission of the International Registry for Lethal Hands is to catalog the most formidable hands on the planet. So if you know someone, and you even suspect they possess lethal hands, do not hesitate. Register them immediately. And if you've ever looked at your own hands and thought, damn, these dogs are dangerous, don't settle. Go register. Head over to registeryourhands.com, fill out a simple form, and you're official. Remember, use the promo code Chael to save 20%, or just click on the link below. Colby and Ian Garry, it just doesn't feel like one that you could unwind. Right? It just doesn't feel like one that you could run back and rewind. And there's so much about it that I appreciate. I mean, Colby Covington has never been called out. Are you ready for that? Go ahead and Google that. Go ahead and search that. Go smear it in my face. Now, if somebody calls somebody out knowing full well that they already have a signed contract against somebody else, it excludes any sincerity. So I do not count it. With that said, I don't believe that's even happened to Colby, but I'm just sharing for you. If that happened, it excludes any sincerity, and I would not count it. Now, while I say nobody, I guess you'd have to call Gilbert Burns nobody, because Gilbert Burns has called him out. Gilbert Burns has called Colby out when Colby was on top, when Colby was in between, right, not knowing where he's going to go, when other people weren't calling Colby out. I'm very sincere. I will give that to Gilbert. I will not take that from him. I like the idea. They're in Florida. I think that it's very similar. They were in the division at the same time. They were both number one contenders. When they were both number one contenders, they both thought the other one should be number one contenders. It'd be right. It's one of those things. So I'm all for that. And if I'm to tell the story honestly, Ian Garry now goes into the category of nobody. Ian Garry has now called Colby out, and Colby has responded. It's very hard to run that back. It's very hard to have a live call out by a guy like Ian Garry and have a response by a guy as good at giving responses as Colby and then run it back. However, you are doing a grudge match. I mean, it is going to throw off the ebb and flow, right? I mean, just by example, what's the expression in the sport? You're only as good as your last match? Okay. Well, if we're doing that, Colby lost his last match. If we're doing Ian Garry has won 15 straight. Right? So Colby's last loss is 4 months ago, and Ian's undefeated hasn't lost in 25 years. Now, the only relevance there would be it can be tricky to get Colby back to a title fight. I don't like saying that because I know how driven Colby is. I don't want to take anything from him. But it can be tricky. Like Colby being willing to go after the next generation with this beautiful record, taking a huge risk as a way of showing the world I can still beat anybody. I can beat any of them. I think it's great. I think that's really great. But that can be hard to get those actual matches because the decision makers are going to see that as well. They're going to think, why am I going to throw my 25-year-old unbeaten prospect out of whack, out of the line? And I also think there's an answer for that. Like, as impressive as it might sound when I say Colby lost his last fight and Gary's gone 25 years without being beaten, like that does sound really good. But Colby's also ranked 5 spots in front of Garry. So there is reason. All of a sudden, it does start to make some sense. Now, I want to get that out of the way because I do feel, right, Colby is a very scary night. There's some guys that are hard nights. There's some guys that are tricky nights. There's these different words. But Colby's a scary night because Colby's going to hurt you. For sure. He's not going to try to do anything else but hurt you. He's not going to try to submit you. He's not going to try to make you pass out. Stretch your arm and make you say, oh, he's just not going to try those things. He's going to try to control you and beat you within the confines of the time limit. He will hurt you for 15 minutes or he will hurt you for 25. If there's a stoppage somewhere in there, it wasn't on purpose. Like that was no part of Colby's plan. His plan is to control you while he's bludgeoning you. Re-control you while he's bludgeoning you. He doesn't get tired of it. I'm just saying, like, that's a scary guy to face. So I do want to give Garry his credit. Also, if you're just trying to turn the page, if you're trying to turn the page on the WAG and the book, and if that's what you're trying to do, and it looked as though Garry was the most frightening thing in his life. How am I going to deal with a few people on social media, right? I mean, it did appear that way, but he is now the one keeping it around. By calling out Colby and stating the reasons that you're calling out Colby, Ian Garry is keeping around the very subject that we thought was going to crumble him. And see, that changes everything. If all we're doing is looking at this and we're trying to look cool, right? This is junior high. How do I get egg on my face and still look cool? Well, I can't cry and run. I know what I can't do. But what can I do? Right? And there's ways where you're getting the egg off and you look at the cute girl and you just try to roll with it a little bit more. And I'm just sharing for you, if Ian Garry keeps the subject around that we thought was going to crumble him, and it is now his doing that makes it a narrative, he's now in charge. He wins. It is over. He wins. It was my suggestion 101 from the beginning. You never run from something. You steer into it. So you got to set that on hold just a little bit. But in many ways, it's important that Garry stays on this and gets the match for that reason. Now, that's still going to be out there. They're still going to park. They're still going to park the WAG in the front seat. And they're still going to do a cameo as he kisses her on his way to the check-in center. I mean, it's still going to be part of the show. Then it sure would be helpful to get a win there, but a lot of pressure. And we like that as fight fans, don't we? It's the one that the average promoter misses, but the great promoters understand. An average promoter will call a good guy with a big name and say, hey, man, behind the scenes, hey, man, I'll give you an easy fight. I'll give you a bunch of money. I'll give you an easy fight. And then wonder why that guy couldn't draw, why he didn't do better. Because promoters always miss. It's not just about one guy looking good. There needs to be a separation. There needs to be a gap. So if one guy just stayed here, he didn't look any better, but this guy's whole career could come to an end, boom. Now you got a marketable fight. If one guy can really spring up and another guy can drop, right? One guy goes to a title fight and one guy goes to retirement. But you don't have any bigger fight than that right there. Any two guys under contract, you pick them at random. If that's the story going in, one guy goes for a title and one guy is never seen again. Boom, it works. Any two guys you want to do, that story works. And I only share for you, it's an interesting match. It really is. And Colby has come out and he's responded. He's on a yacht. Did you guys see this with Colby? It was just great. It was just great. People don't understand what Colby's doing, but they're starting to. There's only been 3 guys to do it. Colby, who got 3 title shots by doing it. Kevin Lee, who fought for the title by doing it. Henry Cejudo, who had, I've lost track, but is it 6 in total title fights? He has 6 title fights in total. Might have had 7, 8. I'm getting 8 over here by one producer. The point is, and they're the only 3 guys to do it. Nobody else has ever done it. Now you got to figure out what it is, but I'm giving you all of the clues. So Colby goes onto a yacht and he's cutting a promo against Ian Garry. And he basically told Ian that I will do the fight. You're going to have to beg me. I will do the fight. I will give you what you asked for. I have 3 simple stipulations. And then he goes from there. And I mean, 1, and then they're brutal, guys. There's a reason I'm not a prude, and I'm not telling you what they are. You have to go look them up. They're brutal. Why was that important? Why do I mention that? Well, last time Colby had a microphone, last time he was at a press conference, it created a whole lot of waves on what is allowed and what isn't. All the way down to Errol Hawani was discussing if there should be a regulatory board that decides what can be said and what can't be said. I mean, it's that big of a deal that it became a topic with the top journalist in the entire sport. Now, at a minimum, what are we going to get coming out of that? Well, lesson learned. Of course, lesson learned. We don't have to slap him on the hands or anything else. Colby pays attention. Lesson learned. He won't do that again. Oh, he did it again. Oh, yeah, he did it again. And that's what was so, that's why it was great. You can never buckle when they tell you to buckle. You can never apologize when they tell you to apologize. I mean, there is a PR lesson going on here between the two of them. Don't act like Colby's in the spot that he wants to be. He doesn't want to be the guy that's knocked out. He wants to be the champion of the world. So how's he going to come back from that? Well, he's going to create really big things. And he's only tried one so far, and it worked. Here we are discussing it. I saw it discussed on ESPN 3 hours ago. Good guy and the bad guy discussed it over there. As a matter of fact, I think it was called Round 2. And my point is simply this for you. Before we get in the X's and O's, if you're going for call-outs, and if you're going for can I get it, if you're going for a match, and if you're called out, how you're going to navigate that, right? I mean, there's a number of things at play here. I like Gilbert versus Colby, but I will acknowledge that Garry versus Colby has something special too. And I can't think of Garry versus anybody else that's got that built-in feature. I think that there is some legs to it. I think if these guys are very legitimate behind the scenes when that phone rings, or if they're proactive and they're on the phone themselves saying, give me this guy, and the other guy says the same thing, I think we could have a fight between Ian Garry and Colby Covington.